Today, I'm joined by Rajan Sodhi, co-founder and CMO of Hyperview. Rajan is a seasoned B2B leader who specializes in helping technology companies scale. I've seen him do it many times, crafting repeatable go-to-market playbooks, driving international expansion, and aligning marketing, sales, and product for growth, which is a lot easier said than done. Rajan's practical insights on go-to-market strategy, storytelling, metrics, and also keeping abreast of the latest marketing tech make him a great guest for anyone focused on growth and international expansion in the B2B space. Rajan is always ahead of the game in terms of experimenting and working with new marketing technologies, as just said. So I'm always interested and we'll be asking him about what tools he's currently using and playing with. Welcome to Crossing the Pond, Rajan. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Honored to be here.
The honor is ours. But before we dive into the nitty-gritty of the marketing and B2B world that we're going to be discussing, can you tell us about Hyperview's origin story and the problem that you set out to solve when you started the company? Because I don't think there's been a time when it's been more relevant, given the geopolitical situations that we find ourselves in, than the benefits that Hyperview is offering. So please tell us a little bit more about Hyperview.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Richard. Thank you for asking. So really the genesis of Hyperview came from an experience that we had, myself and my partner, Jad Jabara. We worked for a company called Pier 1 Hosting. We were there for almost a decade. And at that company, we were managing 22 data centers across 2 continents and 4 time zones. And you can imagine the inherent complexity in managing that kind of distributed infrastructure. And when you are managing that kind of infrastructure, you're dealing with things like outages, you're dealing with, downtime, and all those things are very costly. So anytime that we wanted to really know what was happening in real time was very difficult. We were dealing with fragmented systems that weren't speaking to each other. We had different silos that were reporting different data that wasn't matching up. We had very error-prone human processes in place, like auditing, which would take a lot of time, a lot of cost, a lot of human resources. And at the end of the day, we were running a company based on these type of metrics that weren't in sort of a unified manner without the real true visibility into the infrastructure. And, thankfully we had a great team. And so we relied a lot on heroic efforts. But at the end of the day, that doesn't scale. So when we left, we had decided that we were going to create a platform that would resolve a lot of those issues and really build a platform that we could only dream of back then. So the real sort of starting point for Hyperview as it exists today was in 2016. We acquired a software called Ramp out of St. Louis. We brought it in-house, did some enhancements to the UX and UI, improved some features and so on, and went to market with it. And we did that for a good sort of 18 months. And there were a lot of learnings in that. Number one, the product was really a Me Too product, meaning it was just like everything else that was in the industry. Number two, it's an on-prem software, which means it requires care and feed from internal resources. So that means you got to spin up servers, you got to spin up databases and so on. The implementation cycle could take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And people, they're not very satisfied, obviously. They don't get to taste the value of the product immediately, which is what most people want these days. And on top of that, it was a big ticket item in terms of a lot of money, a lot of spend had to be upfront. Professional services contracts, support contracts, perpetual licenses at that time. And so we decided that this wasn't good enough. This is not going to resolve the issues that data center operators are facing on a day-to-day basis. So after about 18 months, we decided to go stealth and start developing our own platform from scratch. And in that, we made some very key decisions. The first one, the big one, is that we decided that we were going to go all in on being a SaaS platform. So truly cloud native.
Right.
And it might not sound like a big deal today because we have so many SaaS platforms. But in this particular space, all of the products that were out there were on-prem.
So this is 2016, you said?
2016 to about 2018 is when we were selling Ramp and we were, with that product. Around sort of middle of 2017, we made this decision And so we went stealth and we decided to go and start developing this product, Hyperview, which exists today. That took a good 2.5 years of development, just focused development. And with that product, yes, we decided to go all in being cloud native. And at that time, and the reason why there's a lot of on-prem products is that there were still many customers that were reluctant to put their data in the cloud, which sounds really funny because we have CRM systems, we have ERP systems, we have human resource systems in the same companies that were afraid to put their data center data in the cloud. But we knew that the things were shifting. And using a famous hockey analogy, we were decided to skate where the puck is going and not where it's been. And so, fast forward to 2020, we launched the first version of Hyperview, and in that time, we started getting some adoption, some early adoption, which was fantastic. And I have so much respect for the companies that took a chance on us early on. And with that, we kept on tweaking, kept on testing. We tested our pricing model. We tested our go-to-market strategy. We were really using that sort of full year of 2020 to 2021 of just doing a lot of go-to-market, GTM testing. And we finally arrived, I would say in sort of late 2021, we got to the point where we were able to define our unit of value, which was an asset. So meaning that if you come to Hyperview, you just sign up for a number of assets that you have, and you pay based on that. So in our case, $3 per asset per year, and you can start very small. In those days, you could start with a $100 account. Today, we have a free trial, so you can sign up for a 30-day free trial, no credit card needed. You can get going. At that time, we introduced a $100 model. It was a minimum of, I think it was a 50 asset count or something like that. And so we went to the market with that, and we found we were starting to get really early indicators that this was working. And what was really fascinating to see is that when we were selling RAMP, and quite a lot like a lot of the legacy decent providers today, because it is a big ticket item, because it has multiple stakeholders and so on, it would take a very long time to get from a prospect to an actual client, sometimes 12 to 18 months.
Right.
And you would, getting budget approvals and so on. And we felt that we could reduce that to 45 days. So we took, with this model of going cloud native, SaaS, and taking advantage of all the features and benefits that you can deliver to a data center operator, we felt, number one, we could create a very easy way to adopt the software at a really low price point. And that literally could put on your credit card, and you can just you're off to the races. And it's very easy to then expand. You can just add more assets. Everything gets prorated to the existing subscription term, and that really started to come to fruition. And we saw really great results and increased adoption. And by, I would say, 2022, 2023, things really started to explode. We started not only seeing a vast increase in adoption, not just in North America, but really around the world. Again, being a SaaS platform that follows a product-led growth strategy, where the product does the majority of the selling. We really just rolled it out. We focused on the one thing that was the most important thing, which is an exceptional user experience. I truly believe that the reason why Hyper-V stands out is because we're the only decent software that puts the user experience first, which is, it's a big thing to say, but it is reality. If you look at this category of software, the feedback has been that it's very complicated to use. It costs a lot of money. It overpromises and it underdelivers. Many times after a multi-million-dollar rollout of a decent software, it ends up being sitting on the shelf. Teams are not adopting it, they're not using it, and it's quite useless at that point.
Well, also, I mean, the story you were telling in terms of the gestation period from opportunity to a deal, a lot of the people that would have initiated that conversation with other DSIM providers would have probably moved on by the time it was implemented and installed, adding more friction to the process.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about moving to this platform in a product-led growth model is we were no longer targeting, executive level, to the main decision makers who hold the purse strings. We were able to now target, network engineers, data center managers, system administrators. And they would find us. They would be able to test the product very easily, $100, get going, or a 30-day free trial, and go through the process. And the next thing they know, they're experiencing a level of visibility into their infrastructure they never had. And then it's very easy for them to start evangelizing it internally, and it starts moving up the chain and getting the approvals for a bigger budget in terms to support their specific environment. And that's exactly what we've seen. And as a result of that, we have reduced the sales cycle significantly, under 45 days. We're moving towards that 30-day mark. Basically, somebody signs up for a free trial right after the end of it, they're already going. And that model, that experience, and the feedback that we've been receiving, we do one of the things that I'm really proud of what we do here is we work very closely with our customers. We have a feature request button that's available, it's inside the portal. We get feature requests all the time, and we prioritize every quarter our product roadmap, and we will reprioritize depending on what features kind of make sense. If it does make sense and there's enough customers who want it, we will then actually prioritize that. So we are averaging now a product release every 7 weeks, which is absolutely unheard of in this industry.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm going to come back to customer feedback because that's clearly been such an important part of your journey. The story you were telling suggests that the target customer and the decision maker has evolved as you've grown as a business. Can you tell me about that? How has that definition of your target customer in terms of the decision-making units surprised you or changed since Hyperview was first launched?
Well, when we started Hyperview, we were very much focused on sort of the SME market. We felt that the SME market was underserved when it came from decent software because it was cost prohibitive. There wasn't a lack of need for decent tools, but there was a big barrier. It was basically just large enterprises that were adopting decent, at any kind of scale. So originally, we went to the market really sort of focusing on the SME market, and we thought that that's where we'd get the best adoption, particularly being a new SaaS platform. To our surprise, now in 2026, that's completely changed. Not that we don't still have SMEs, but we have a lot of large enterprises now that have adopted Hyperview and are not only have adopted, they are growing significantly with us. We're lucky enough to have some of the top 3 largest financial services companies as clients. We have healthcare, we have government, we have, penetrated some of these industries that were traditionally a few years ago said it has to be on-prem, it has to be a perpetual license, all those sort of things. And today it's like, no, it has to be a SaaS platform. It has to be subscription based. We don't want to deal with the headaches of managing the software. We just want it to work. And that has been a significant shift. So making that early decision, back in 2017, that we were going to go all in as a cloud native platform only, not have an on-prem version or and so on, and strictly subscription. And I guess the third thing that we did, which was very different at that time, we published our pricing. We made an early decision that we're going to be completely transparent with our pricing. There's no hidden fees, there's no gotchas, you don't even really need professional services. And if you want to have that support, we offer some, basic bundled packages of hours that people can use, but they don't have to consume it because we have very thorough documentation online. We post videos, and today now we have lots of product tours. So we make it really easy for people to self-serve, and that was the goal. So the shift in seeing requests like RFPs that we get today now state it needs to be a SaaS platform.
Yeah.
That was very different back then, and obviously we feel we made a really good decision there because we really are the only truly cloud native decent software at the moment.
And whilst obviously the technology aspect to Hyperview is a huge part of its success, actually what you're talking about here is the marketing positioning and the communication with the stakeholders. And the story seems to be about removing friction, empowering the customer, making it as simple, as quick, and as easy, which is a lesson that many B2B brands can look at, regardless of what actual technology or what the B2B product and service is that they're selling. But with that in mind, given the demand for automation, the demand for self-service, I mean, what are the biggest challenges facing B2B brands today? in terms of the marketing communication part?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now we are so cluttered with there's a lot of noise. I think just as a consumer, let's start as being as a consumer, this the amount of noise, particularly, targeted advertising, the way the algorithms work in social media, it's almost impossible if you just rely on those sort of avenues to get true understanding of a product that's out there that could actually solve your problems. So one of the things that or one of the things I made a very early decision on is that we're going to focus on really using the product as a vehicle for our marketing, meaning that we don't need to fluff it up. We can just show what it does, demonstrate it, get it in people's hands as fast as we can. Because we know the second we get it into their hands, the chances of them falling in love with it are great. And so for me, it's more important that we make it easy for data center operators to discover us, to try it, and fall in love with the product. And really focusing on that, it's like an ethos for myself and how we then market the product. In order to do that, I need to be able to provide as much information on the product itself and how it resolves very specific challenges that data center operators are facing on a day-to-day basis. It's a very stressful role. And a lot of people don't, unless they're actually in the data center space, don't really understand what it takes to keep the lights on. They don't understand what it takes to keep all that, the networks up. And, God forbid there's an outage, the amount of scrambling and stress that it puts on still, on very limited resources is incredible. And so when you are able to introduce, automation tools to allow them to make that easier, it makes a big difference. When I look at now how we are doing our marketing from that specifically, the areas we're I've been focusing on is how do I find ways to get that content out? How do I find the proper delivery models to get our message out? So number one, obviously, public relations is a huge one for us, and the reason why is that if we want to actually resonate with a potential customer of Hyperview, we need to give them a message that is authentic, that is rooted in a bold sort of opinion or take on the industry, on where things are going, and tying it back to the platform. And so we use PR to get that message out. We use very focused on right now sort of the founder's brand approach. Jad, my partner and the CEO of the company, he has been a prolific writer these days on LinkedIn, just sharing his thoughts. There's no selling.
I think that's key.
Yeah, anything that's happening in the industry, where the industry is going, trends, challenges in the space, and ultimately, how does DSIM as in general has to evolve to help resolve these growing challenges that are happening. And data centers today are not just these single data centers anymore. It's hybrid environments. It's data center, it's cloud, it's co-location, it's edge now, and so again, very distributed infrastructure, which creates even more challenges than back in the day when we were working at Pier One Hosting. So being able to actually cut through all the noise, being able to deliver a signal that helps people understand that helps them know that we understand their challenges. We know we live their shoes. We know exactly where they are. That has been probably the most important aspect in the way that we market. The way that we deliver it, obviously, I mentioned PR. Another one that's been very, very effective for us is Reddit. And I don't mean advertising. I mean, for example, there's a subreddit called Data Center. I'm very active in it. One of the things that if there's some post about DCIM or anything related to that, and I feel there's something relevant that we can say about it, I'll post there. I always make sure that I disclose that I work for the company so that I don't get flamed. But again, it's very much not selling. It's just saying, oh, you have this issue. This is what this software can do. And we have actually found that to be very, very effective.
And it's the credibility and the empathy and the trust that is evident in forums like Reddit and also in editorial environments that I don't think you can buy that in terms of advertising or paid for media.
And if you look at the data center operators and the people within that environment, they are very savvy individuals. They consume information. They do a lot of their own self-learning. They prefer that. And so they go to Reddit boards to find, they want to get the real stuff. They want to get the signals. They go to, reputable editorial publications to consume that information. And in our case, we're going direct, using like a platform like LinkedIn to deliver that message. And that has been very, very effective because what it allows us to do is shape where Hyperview stands in this space. How is Hyperview different? What is our take? We have a very bold take on where the space is, where the space is going. In fact, my partner is going to be doing a speaking engagement data center world next month, and it's called the Now, New, and Next in Data Center Infrastructure Management. And that is an example of how we look at things. We're always keeping ourselves abreast on how things are shifting. For example, today now data sovereignty is so critical. Probably 10 years, people weren't really thinking that much about it. I mean, it was
Yeah.
there, but they weren't really thinking about it as heavily as they are today. How does DSIM make sure that we support a user's needs for data sovereignty and where their data resides?
Yeah.
That's very, very key. So there's so many things happening. And now with AI and the explosion there and how that fits in, AI on its own and just using the word AI doesn't really mean much. But using AI effectively to help, again, reduce manual tasks that are error prone and just take a lot, suck up a lot of resources and make each individual within a data center operations team more and more effective. It's not about replacement, but it's about being more effective and also being more efficient with the time and resources that they have in place.
And you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation about the role that customer feedback has played in your product development. Can you talk me through some of the mechanics? How does that work? How does a company like Hyperview listen?
Absolutely. So it's really simple. We have a button that's available in the portal. It says submit a feature request. A simple form pops up. The user fills in the information, tells exactly what they're looking for. It's submitted. They immediately get an acknowledgement. It's then sent to our product engineering team that triages it. And based on what they're looking for, we then make a decision. Do we add it to the product roadmap? Is it a valid request? Have we been receiving other similar type requests for this feature? And once it's determined that, for example, in this case, yes, this is a go, we let the user know that, hey, we agree. This is a feature that we should be adding, and we are going to keep you, up to date. And the system does that on the progress of it. And once it is, it's ready to go live, we let them know that's actually going to go live prior to it actually being released.
I love that because I think it fosters a degree of investment and therefore loyalty and ownership of the success of Hyperview. And having used software as an individual and as a business myself and submitted requests, often it feels like they just go into the ether and you never hear anything about them again. No gratitude, no acknowledgement. It's like a business doesn't care. And it sounds to me that that step of acknowledging and keeping your market or your customer or your prospect informed of how you're responding to a request and how that's manifested in product development, I can only imagine is very powerful.
It's absolutely critical. When I look at some of the dialogue between our product engineering team and our users on feature requests, so a lot of the messaging is automated in terms of the status, but there's a lot of dialogue that happens in between. The glee that I see from a user who sees that their feature request is going to be released in the next rollout is phenomenal. It also fosters a very close relationship with our users, and that again cascades within the organization, meaning the user's organization. Other users of the product, they find out, wow, this, John submitted this feature request, and this just made our life easier, and it's now live, and other users get more engaged into the product as well.
And that would cultivate word of mouth referrals and recommendations and that sense of pride that somebody's had an input into something that's manifested in a technological change. I also know that you put a great deal of energy into celebrating heroes within your marketplace. Can you tell us a little bit about that? It's a thing that I believe other B2B marketers will aspire to, or maybe wonder if it's worth how to go about it. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that program and how and the kind of results it's delivered.
Yeah. So getting back to the data center world, the data center operations world, it's not an easy job. There's a lot of stress, there's a lot of pressure. And a lot of those things go unnoticed. As long as the lights are on, as long as the network is up, everyone's happy. You only hear about anything when things are things have gone wrong, or
Yeah.
there's an outage, or things have gone down. Now everybody's paying attention. We recognize that, again, being from that space and seeing it firsthand, that there are a lot of unsung heroes that are keeping our digital world together and working. And so we decided that we were going to start recognizing those unsung heroes, and bring them to the forefront and let people know what these people do. And so we created this program called Guardians of the Infrastructure. And with that recognition program, we started profiling different data center operators, anywhere from management to executive level, to people within the space that are influencers, that are really tied in, dialed in directly into the space, and bring them to the forefront and help raise the profile not only of the individuals, but of the profession itself. Honestly, it's been a lot of fun. We've had a lot of fun with it, and we're going to continue. There's some other ideas that we have around it to expand it further, but the feedback has been great. I know that when we go to some of these events, we get a lot of questions and accolades about, hey, that's such a great job that you guys are doing this. Again, it's a space that doesn't get a lot of recognition. It's a space that
Yeah.
it's a profession that doesn't get noticed much, but when you're in it, those are the guys, or those are the people that are putting in those heroic efforts to make sure that everything is working, and our digital world continues to be what it is today.
And so celebrating the industry and the people that you celebrate in the Guardians of the Data Center, for other B2B marketers, they might be looking at it and looking at this conversation and thinking they could do that with their customers. Do you do that with just people that happen to be customers that you're working with, or is that just, does the celebration go beyond that?
Yeah, no, it has nothing to do with just customers. In fact, one of our first guardian was the CTO of Lenovo. A lot of the people that we profile are not simply our customers. It's anybody in the industry that it merits the recognition. And the nice thing about the program is, because others within the space see it, and they get, they're kind of excited by it, and then we get other people say, hey, well, you should nominate. They start nominating somebody else, and then we get that information. So it kind of creates a bit of a loop.
So you get that referral. Yeah. So the nice thing about that story is I think it talks to the credibility and the empathy and the respect that you've got for the customers, which in a B2B space is so evident and often is lacking, I think.
I agree. For us, if we're going to relate to our users, if we're going to, they need to know that we understand their pain. That we understand the space. We're not simply just a company that came together and put a software and hoped for the best, that we could resolve their problems. We lived them. And so part of that is, that's the authenticity. Uh, we know exactly what you're going through. We know, um, the challenges you're facing on a daily basis. We know it's growing. We know that the pressure is increasing. And look, you have a friend in Hyperview. Here's a platform that will alleviate a lot of those daily challenges and pains that you have, so you can focus on the more meaningful work.
Yeah, and I suppose if you were to just restrict the guardians of infrastructure to just your customers, it would have less value, it would have less currency, and it's the credibility that gives it the prestige and the value for the people that receive those awards. How do you measure marketing effectiveness at Hyperview? Because it's always so difficult, and especially if you're in the fast growth stage and innovative and you're innovating, disrupting measurement and marketing. How does that work for you?
Yeah. So I mean, the amount of KPIs that are available to you is infinite at this point. So again, we're a really small team. So I have to focus on things that really kind of get us through the sort of the process, and understand, where our leads are coming from, what's working, what's converting, and so on. So very much from the beginning, it's still, marketing qualified leads that come through. In our case, trial signups. In the early, an early trial sign up, the first we look at How many active users. We measure active use by the number of assets they start adding to the platform. That's the first early indicator that they're actually using it, the software. And then from there on, it then turns into, okay, in the case of a trial, that converts into an actual paid customer. And then as we look at those early stages, we start saying, well, how are they growing? And so then we look at opportunities. Are they starting to add more assets? Is usually the first thing that we look at. Is like how quickly and how often are they adding more assets to the platform? Because again, that's our unit of value. As you get into sort of the later stages of a client's time with using Hyperview, you're now looking at not only just asset, but are there add-on features that they're now adopting? That's another one that we start to look at. We also look at, and we're starting to see this in many cases, are they adding more users in terms of inviting another division? Recently, we had a university in the US that was a client of ours for 2 years. And late last year, they said, there's another division on our campus that is very interested in using Hyperview after seeing what we've done, and they want to basically ditch the current platform that they're on. And by the end of the last year, they signed on, so that expansion occurred. So we're always looking at, how are they expanding in terms of assets? Are they adopting more of the add-on features? Are they expanding in terms of users? We have, in terms of the platform itself, there's no limit on users. We don't charge for users, but the ability to expand to another division that wants to add their, basically that means that they're going to add more assets. Again, gets back to the expansion of asset that are being used in the platform.
And as one of the co-founders, that must be tremendously rewarding to see that expansion within an organization that you're already working on. Looking ahead to the next 3 to 5 years, what marketing technology shifts do you think will change the way that B2B vendors are engaging with enterprise buyers?
Well, I mean, it's AI. AI is by far, I guess, for every industry at this point, but specifically in marketing, it's happening now. It's going to continue to, as these tools get more and more intelligent and easier to use, the adoption is going to be like mad. Today, if I look at myself, uh, 2 years ago, I had in my budget to hire a writer. And I happened to, one morning, happened to walk into a coffee shop on my way to work, and one of my closest high school friends was sitting at a table in front of a laptop. And so we were chatting for a while, and he was in the middle of writing some blog material. And so ironically, we're in completely different industries. I mean, he's a mold inspector.
Mold as in mold on the wall kind of mold inspector.
Yeah, mold.
How does somebody get a job like that?
Yeah,
I bet there's some very fascinating facts about mold
yeah,
to be had.
yeah, absolutely. So as he was developing this content, and he was writing quite a few, pages, and he said, "Have you ever heard of this tool called Jasper.ai?" And I said, "No, I've never heard of this." So 2 minutes of kind of him showing it to me and describing what it does. I was absolutely fascinated. So I rushed to the office, and the first thing I did was I looked up Jasper.ai. And I signed up for the basic, didn't take me long to say, I'm going to give this a try. It was like, there was a 14-day trial or something like that. And signed up, started playing around with it, and I was sold. I was like, wow, okay, this is something. And after about, I think, a month to 2 months of using it, I went back to the team and said, you know what, scrap my budget request for a writer. I think I'm good. I think I'll be able to manage this just between myself and this platform. And, fast forward, now 2 years later, I mean, the amount of changes in that platform are unbelievable, to the point I'm not consuming all the features. Similarly, another product that I've adopted is a platform called Storylane.io. One of the things that I want to do with Hyperview is make it really easy for any visitor to our website to learn as much about the product, get familiarized with the product. again, I want it to be in their hands as quickly as possible. None of this kind of old school, like everything's kind of behind the gate, you can only see the software once you book a demo or, all that kind of stuff that is rampant in our industry. I'm the opposite. I said, here, this is what it looks like. This is exactly how it works. And oh, you want to see how this feature works, or you have this challenge. This is how it resolves it. And so Story Lane allows me to develop product tours, and it's a phenomenal software that has allowed me to go from like having no product tours and thinking about the whole video process of having to film it and all that and record it and edit it. Suddenly, over a weekend, I had 2 product tours done after signing up. That's another example of an AI enabled platform that is changing, allowing me to be far far more effective. And there's others. There's AliAI.com is another one. Um, that's for SEO. I do a lot of work on SEO, but it's grueling. There's a lot of aspects to it, not just content and keywords, but there's a whole back end optimization of it. And so I've been focusing much more on the front end side of it. The back end side is not something I truly enjoy. And again, I was looking at I'm going to be needing to hire an SEO agency and so on, and was introduced by to AliAI.com actually through my partner, and he said take a look at this. And again, I played around with it, and within a couple of days signed up. And the next thing I know, I'm optimizing the back end of our website at scale in a way that I've never been able to do in 10 or 11 years. So you look at how is it impacting marketing? I mean, these are we're still kind of in the early days of AI, and yet the power of these platforms, the power of these AI enabled tools is incredible. This morning, I woke up and was reading about Claude. A gentleman had tweeted about. Did you say tweeting or did you say X'd? I have no idea, but let's just say tweet.
Yeah,
Um,
Xing.
Xing, right? But he put out a tweet, and to his credit, he was very transparent. He said, "Hey, I just used Claude Cowork, and I was able to basically at scale develop an entire SEO program and have it execute it." And literally was, an SEO agency in the box. And he shared exactly how he set it up. He shared all the prompts, and I was blown away. I had a bookmark, and I'm very very intrigued by it.
I think it was you that advised me maybe about 6 months ago that every time I see a post that offers me prompts, advice and prompts, save it because it will become useful. So I've adopted that. I've got now a whole bunch of whether it's Instagram or LinkedIn or any other, just advice on different prompts. It's incredibly generous the way that this industry, this particular aspect of marketing, people are sharing their expertise very freely, which I think is new. I'm not sure that the marketing professional was as collaborative as it has become. The last question I want to ask you is regarding the B2B buying process and the way that that has changed. Because when you started doing business for Hyperview, presumably the way that buyers were acting and operating and discovering and exploring solutions was very different from the way it is now and the way in which you think that's going to be in the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, I think what you just said is a big part of it. People are sharing information readily. If you go to Reddit, you go to a subreddit, the amount of really good, authentic, genuine advice or hacks or ideas is amazing. And this is why, you see these subreddits just exploding in terms of usage. I find myself going to them for very specific, you know, areas of interest. I think what's changed is really there's been a cultural shift in general. We're all feeling it, right? There's the good and the bad of social media. The good part is that people are able to share their ideas very freely and very easily. They're also able to find like-minded individuals. It's a double-edged sword, depending on where we're talking. But in terms of marketing, I think it's been very effective. We're definitely seeing people being far more collaborative, being far more, way less guarded. Yeah, I mean, when I was coming up through the profession, it was very old school. Everyone wanted to, They want to hold on to their information, their knowledge, because that was their value. They can't, I can't share my expertise because that's going to somehow devalue me. Very much that kind of approach. And it's funny, even back then, I never liked it. I remember when blogging was just kind of taking off, still very early, but there was definitely happening. I started experimenting. I remember one of the founders of Pure One, a gentleman by the name of Lance Tracy, who was always on the bleeding edge of everything, and he kind of planted a bug in my ear. We're talking 2004 here, and said, you should look at blogging, and kind of see how that works, and kind of walked away and just left it kind of like it just came into my ear. And so me being me, I had to find out what this is all about. And I tested it out by introducing this blog called Big Marketing for Small Business. And my whole premise on that blog was I'm going to share everything I know, everything that works, that helps small businesses get access to agency type advice without having to pay for it. As a result of that, it grew an audience. And it was simply because I was being straightforward and not guarded. So you look at that and you look at what's happening today, that's happening at scale and it's happening globally. You're not limited to a regional knowledge. You're not limited to, as just a specific set of individuals that you can get this information from, or you have to join some kind of an association, which we used to do, but, before. I used to do, different marketing associations to get access to certain information and tools and what's coming up and what's happening in the industry. You can find that all online. You can find that in communities all all different points of the internet, and get really really solid, actually better than that was back then. That is actually practical and that can be useful, and you put into use right away.
And I guess the advantage of this is that you can verify it by looking at different sources rather than just being reliant on an industry association policy or a conference or a workshop. There's more sources to verify the information, which gives B2B marketers presumably more conviction about the decisions that they're making.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that where it's a very interesting time. Where is it going to go? I don't quite know. I don't think any of us really know. But I will say that the marketing profession itself is definitely shifting. There's a lot of things that I used to, provide. I used to have a side hustle where I was doing consulting on branding and on and so on. And I can see the gaps today. Or not the gaps, but I can see the where people are not going to, they're not going to spend the money for that kind of consulting anymore. It's so, not only is it available online, but the quality is actually quite remarkable, and that's coming from somebody who's been doing this for a very long time. So I think as marketing evolves, there's certain areas of marketing are going to be very very hard hit.
During our last recording, we had an electrical storm, so I wasn't able to wrap up the conversation with Rajan, which I thought was extremely insightful, and so I want to thank him for giving his time, his insight, and engaging in crossing the pond. Thank you, Rajan, and stay tuned.